In the previous panel, we looked at a halachic insert to the Birchat Torah. The opening stanza was a statement to the effect that one must be extremely scrupulous with respect to the Birchat Torah, and it was noted that this and all the halachic inserts are based upon the Shulchan Aruch Harav. The Shulchan Aruch Harav, in this context, would be treated as a secondary source. However, modern scholarship has been able to demonstrate that almost every word and every sentence in the Shulchan Aruch Harav can be traced to an earlier primary source. This is reflected in the voluminous footnotes, an example of which will be presented towards the end of this panel. In Hallacha Aleph to Siman Mem Zayin states that Birchat HaTorah tzarech lizaher ba me'od, that one must be exceptionally scrupulous with respect to the Birchat HaTorah. Shelo charava haaretz, ella, double negative, that the only reason that the land was chet reish bet, churban, destruction, and presumably haaretz refers to Eretz Yisrael, that Eretz Yisrael was destroyed mipnei shelo baruchu b'Torah techila, on account of the fact that when they undertook the study of Torah, it was undertaken without a bracha, a statement that the Shulchan Aruch Harav clarifies with lefi shelo hayta chashuva beinehem kol kach levarech. Chashuva, chet shin bet, to think, machshava, chashuv, important, that the Torah was not that important in their eyes, the point where it was felt that a bracha was not necessary. A statement that is fraught with difficulties and needs teasing out. First of all, we need to identify the context of the statement that the land was destroyed because they did not recite a bracha before learning Torah. Are we dealing with the Churban Bet HaMikdash, number one or number two? Or are we looking at the land of Eretz Yisrael in general? And when did this actually take place? That the land was laid waste. Secondly, laying Eretz Yisrael waste on account of the fact that they didn't recite a bracha before learning Torah would appear to be on the surface somewhat disproportionate. Laying the land waste because of avodah zarah, corruption, all the things that are mentioned in the Nedarim would make some sense, although quite harsh. Not reciting a bracha before involving oneself in the mitzvah of limud Torah would appear to be somewhat harsh. Turning to footnote number 3. First off, footnote number 3 provides us with a primary source, and that primary source is Talmud Bavli Nedarim 81a, also Bava Metzia 87ab. The Gemara references to a pasuk in Yirmiyahu 9 and 12. An interesting piece of Gemara that asks rhetorically, Umibnei ma en mitsuyin talmidi chachamim latzeit talmidi chachamim mibneihem, which the Sefaria translates, and for what reason is it not common for talmidi chachamim, Torah scholars, to give rise to Torah scholars from amongst their children? Why are Torah scholars generally born to paupers who are not Torah scholars themselves? And the Gemara goes on to present a range of answers, beginning with Rav Yosef, Rav Sheshet, Mar Zutra, Rav Ashi, and Ravina. The first two, Rav Sheshet and Rav Yosef, from around 300 Common Era. The remaining three living towards the 4th century Common Era, and of interest to us is the opinion of Ravina. And Ravina's response: scholars generally do not produce children who are Torah scholars. Ravina suggests, Shein mevarachim b'Torah tchila. I assume that the parents also did not, before they undertook the study of Torah, they were Talmidei Chachamim, but neglected to make the Birchat HaTorah prior to their learning, which begs the same question that was asked previously. Why didn't they? Saying a bracha for anything should not take more than 15 seconds. The Gemara traces this concept of Ravina to Rav Yehuda, who lived in the middle of the 2nd century Common Era, who was a student of Rav, so that ultimately it is Rav who had promoted this idea regarding the importance of Birchat HaTorah. I shall be taking a closer look at the statement made in Talmud Bavli Nedarim 81a in the next panel. Also in the next panel I shall revisit the idea proposed earlier, that the Birchot HaTorah are essentially one single bracha.